Hello everyone, and welcome to the Hearth. Have you ever been on a road trip? If so, what was your favorite part of the road trip? Was it the destination? Perhaps you were road tripping to some famous beach or to see something of great historical value? Was there a particular spot along the way that you liked the best? Perhaps that was your favorite part? Or was it simply the freedom of the trip in general that you loved? The ability to simply kind of be traveling with no real responsibilities outside of going from place to place? Today's story is something like that. It's about a road trip. I hope you enjoy. Ilsa's family was a tavern family. When the Brass Cat had first opened, the sign had been fashioned from wood and simply nailed above the door. It was a small tavern in a small hamlet, and the family had known every customer by name. Now, 6 generations and 2 wars later, the Brass Cat's sign hung on a metal bracket over a stone street, and over half the customers that came in they never saw again. Ilsa herself could never imagine the tavern being small. She had grown up surrounded by the bustle of the city. People drifted in and out of the tavern, taking a break from their everyday lives for some food and drink. Ilsa loved to make up backstories for the customers in her head. Perhaps the couple sitting by the window were bankers on a holiday. Perhaps the quiet man in the corner was a government agent on a special mission. Perhaps the old man who came in every day at noon was a retired mercenary, ripe with war stories. Every customer was someone in her head. The bell chimed above the door, and she abandoned her daydreaming to man the counter. Her father leaned into the doorway from the kitchen, making sure she was still paying attention. She frowned, and after a quick exchange of gestures, her father, satisfied, vanished back into the kitchen. 2 young men approached the counter. One was armed with a large sword, and the other had 2 small knives looped through his belt. Ilsa tried not to stare, especially at the sword. Were they wandering warriors? They were by far the most exciting customers she had encountered today. "Welcome to the Brass Cat. What can I get for you?" she asked, leaning ever so slightly over the counter to get a better look at the sword. It was slung over the man's back, so she couldn't see much of it, but it still looked impressive. "Do you have anything with fish?" the knife man asked, perusing the menu board above the counter. "All of our seafood options are on the right side of the board," Ilsa replied. "Thank you." The 2 men scanned the menu for a few moments, conferring together before ordering. Ilsa seated them and brought their tickets to her father, barely able to contain her excitement. "Father, did you see them? They look like warriors." "I saw them, sweetheart. No need to get so worked up." "One of them has a sword!" "Darling, city guards come here every night. You see swords all the time." "This is different. All the city guards look the same. These men look like they go on adventures." Her father chuckled. "If you say so, dear. For now, how about you adventure back out to get them their drinks?" Ilsa hurried back out to their table, filtering her questions in her mind. She didn't want to come off as prying, but she had to ask at least a question or 2. She set the tray on the table, giving them her most winning smile. "Here are your drinks, sirs. Your meals will be out in a moment." The 2 thanked her, and she took a moment to get a second look. The swordsman had set his weapon against the wall. It looked much different from the swords the guardsman used. It was about as tall as a man. Even leaning, it was almost as tall as her. The swordsman smiled. "Interested?" Ilsa nodded enthusiastically. "I've never seen a sword like that before." "It's called a claymore. It's Highland make. Some of their warriors use it." Ilsa's eyes widened. Are you Highlanders? The swordsman chuckled. I am, although I've never been there. Ilsa glanced at the other man. Are you a Highlander too? The man shook his head, sipping his drink. I don't look like one, do I? Ilsa didn't know what to say. She had no idea what a Highlander was supposed to look like. I don't know. The knife man grinned. Trust me, I'm not. Ilsa cleared her throat. So, are you two traveling? The swordsman nodded. We're on a road trip. A road trip? We're crossing the country. From Flan to Rivertown and back. You're from Flan? Ilsa was a little disappointed. Flan was a logging town only a few days from the city. No real adventuring required to get from there to here. The men laughed. Did you think we were some wandering warriors from far away? The knife man asked. Ilsa nodded sheepishly. Sorry to disappoint you, miss, he replied. We're of a more local variety. Before she could ask them any more questions, her father called to her from the kitchen. Ilsa, stop pestering the customers and come get them their food. I'll be right back, she whispered, before quickly scampering into the kitchen to grab their food. The bell rang just as she was hefting their trays, so she quickly stepped back out onto the floor, balancing the trays while trying to move as fast as possible. I'll be right with you, she shouted towards the counter. She snuck peeks at the two between her customers, making a point to pass by their table as she brought out the other orders. They may not have been from some faraway land, but they still sparked her sense of wonder. A road trip. Warriors on a road trip. What were warriors doing living in a logging village anyway? She'd never been on a road trip. She wondered what a road trip was like. Eventually, the duo brought their dishes to the counter, and the knife man opened a small pouch, setting a stack of coins on the counter. Thank you for the food. Come back again, Ilsa replied. Maybe you can tell me about your road trip next time. Perhaps. There was the sound of wood scraping wood, and a man leapt from his seat, running toward the door. Ilsa's father shouted expletives at him, tossing aside an empty tray and giving chase. Both had made it only a few steps when, in one smooth motion, the knife man pulled a blade from his belt, twisted, and threw it. The blade passed inches from the would-be runner's face and embedded itself in the doorframe. The knife man pulled a few more coins from the pouch and set them on the counter. My apologies for scoring the wood. The two walked out of the tavern, the knife man pulling his weapon from the frame on the way out. Ilsa watched them leave as her father manhandled the thief. She had to get her father to let her go on a road trip sometime.